We have from Newsday, Nicole Fuller is on the phone, and we're going to talk about the Mangano corruption case. Hello, Nicole?
Yes, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Very good, very good. So, I think Long Island was gobsmacked the other day when the mistrial was declared. What's going on with this stuff?
There was a federal corruption trial with the former Town of Oyster Bay supervisor, John Venditto, former Nassau County executive, Ed Mangano, and his wife, Linda Mangano. That trio was on trial for essentially political corruption allegations in centralized slip. The trial began on March 12th. It was a lengthy case. It took 12 weeks in total. And as your listeners probably know, Mr. Venditto was acquitted last week of all charges. And the judge yesterday declared a mistrial in the case against the Manganos. The federal prosecutors said they plan to retry the case. But yeah, it was a lot of a long trial, and there was a mistrial as far as the Mangano. So there's going to be another trial, according to prosecutors.
Right. What do you expect the reasons are for? I mean, is there any disclosure as to what the exact reason is for the mistrial?
Well, yeah. I mean, essentially, yesterday afternoon, the jury had been deliberating for 9 days at that point, and the foreman of the jury sent a note to the judge at 12:56 in the afternoon saying that he could no longer carry out his duties as a member of the jury and asked to be dismissed.
Okay, that's Mark Tambasopoulos.
Yeah, yes.
Okay,
yes.
I didn't realize the story really, it wasn't clear that he was the foreman, but okay. I was going to ask you that.
Yep, he was a foreman of the jury. He lives in Hicksville. He's 29 years old. He works as an NYPD officer in Manhattan. And he was the foreperson. He sent a note. And at that point, the defense attorneys moved for a mistrial, and the judge granted. She declared the mistrial late that afternoon, and so prosecutors have the option of retrying the case, and they said they're going to.
Right. Is there any more specific information about the juror who kind of called in sick that day, and then they put in a replacement juror?
Yeah, there was a juror a few days prior who sent a note to the judge saying that she didn't want to serve on the jury anymore because, she was subject to some, I guess, verbal abuse. I think it was described as name calling and cursing.
Right.
And she got a doctor's note for some sort of undisclosed illness, and she was dismissed from the jury, replaced with an alternate. Now, at that point, the defense had also asked for a mistrial. The judge denied it. And so, this person was, there was a new alternate was put in place of the juror. They continued their deliberations. And then again, when the foreman sent a note saying that he didn't want to be on the jury anymore, that's when the judge ultimately decided to declare the mistrial.
All right. Well, there are so many interesting facets to this story, and I would really love to see, people go and get these facts and actually report on them. I mean, there's $20 million in play here that we probably won't hear about until all the dust clears from the Mangano and Venditto stuff, and I'd like to know what's going on with that as we move along. Harinder Singh is obviously not paying the monthly payments for this loan. Who is?
Well, yeah. Part of the case, the government's case against John Venditto and Ed Mangano, were the $20 million, over $20 million in loan guarantees for Harinder Singh, who was a concessionaire for the town of Oyster Bay for many years. He ran concessions at the town-owned golf course and also at Tobay Beach. in the town. And he, according to testimony, he had, needed to take out loans in order to do upgrades, to do construction projects at these facilities, but due to a number of factors, the credit market at the time and Mr. Singh's own financial problems, he wasn't able to get the loans on his own. So the town agreed to back the loans,
right?
Essentially guaranteeing them.
Okay.
So if Mr. Singh defaulted and didn't pay, the town would be on the hook.
Right. So let's stop right there, because I want to know how a town. It's not only unusual, probably before this happened, it was probably illegal, too, to guarantee a $20 million loan for any individual.
Well, that was some of the testimony. We heard from Jonathan Sinwright. He was a long-time outside counsel to the town of Oyster Bay, and the government produced emails from Mr. Sinwright telling town officials essentially that it was illegal. It was against the state constitution for the town to guarantee any sort of loan. And so that was sort of the heart of the case, whether or not John Venditto signed off on the loans as part of in exchange for bribes from Harinder Singh, and whether or not Ed Mangano pushed for the loan guarantees again as in exchange for bribes from Harinder Singh.
Okay, well, pushing for the loan is one thing. Everybody has a right to root for their team. I want to know who the principals on the town of Oyster Bay board were that let this happen. Because the taxpayers are going to be on the hook for this $20 million. That's what I see in my little crystal ball at the end of all this.
Yeah. Well, that's subject to civil litigation at this point. The town is denying any liability, and that will be decided later in another venue. John Venditto's defense attorney, basically his argument was that Mr. Venditto was not aware that these loan guarantees were happening, and that it was Frederick May, who was a deputy town attorney, who was a, quote, rogue attorney, who signed off on these loans, did all the paperwork, unbeknownst to Mr. Venditto. And apparently the jury bought that argument because Mr. Venditto was acquitted of all charges. Which
was the other gobsmack of the week for the Long Islanders. I don't know. People are looking at this and thinking, I guess you really can't nail a politician when he's crooked. Well, it almost seems like, you see a litany of charges, you see a month's worth of court, and, he's acquitted. Why? What are we spending money for? Really?
Well, there's a high standard to prove, public corruption cases, and as I think a lot of people would argue as there should be. So the prosecutors have to prove that as a result of receiving these bribes, that a public official took official action in exchange. So, I don't know that this case necessarily prevents any other prosecutions going forward. And again, the prosecutor said that they intend to retry Mangano in his life.
I know, but as you see this over and over again, prosecution is losing its teeth. People shouldn't even worry about being prosecuted because apparently they turn out like this. I'm just saying that's a sense that I think the public can easily identify with. In your article, we talk about the things that Mangano accepted from Singh. It doesn't really say a lot about, it said that Mangano steered Singh. But the board had to change. If there was a rule there that said you can't guarantee a loan for an individual, somebody on the board had to change that rule before this could go on. And if they didn't, then the instrument that created the $20 million guarantee for the loan is illegal in the first place. And how can the banks continue to collect on something that was initiated illegally?
Yeah, like I said, that's subject to civil litigation right now. It's being sort of argued in civil court about whether or not the town is going to have to pay.
Good. So does that mean that they don't have to pay Bill 1 until that's resolved?
It's really really unclear about what's going to ultimately happen to that. There were actually 4 different loans. The first one was a line of credit. That one was actually paid back using the second loan that bank required Mr. Singh to pay the first loan back before he took out the second amount. But yeah, the town
That's
is...
the Peter and Paul story. I've heard that story before, yeah. This is amazing. I mean, it's a mind blower. It really is. Singh is in jail.
He's not, actually. He's at home on house arrest.
Oh, okay.
He testified at the trial some 12, perhaps 13 days he was on the stand. And he's at home. He pleaded guilty to bribing Mr. Mangano and Mr. Venditto, and he's on home confinement, and he is to be sentenced at some point in the future.
Okay, wait a minute. I got to back up. So he pleaded guilty to bribing Mangano, which means does that make it a fact that he bribed Mangano? Or is it just saying, well, I'm guilty of that, but I really didn't do it? Because that would make Mangano guilty of accepting a bribe. Right there. How can he be acquitted of that?
I mean, there's 2 different cases, and Mr. Singh didn't have a trial. He cooperated with the government, hoping to get a lighter sentence in exchange for his guilty plea.
Yeah, right. Boy, that's... So where do we go from here? We wait. I guess we're going to wait and see when the prosecution pops up and says they're going to retry.
Yeah, well, Mr. Venditto, that's completely off the table, obviously, because he was acquitted, although he faces state charges in Nassau County related to the loan guarantees. As I said, the federal prosecutors said yesterday that they plan to retry the Manganos. The judge in the case, Judge Joan Azraq, set a date for a June 28th conference meeting in federal court to decide on to set a trial date. Right. So, as I said, it all indications point to the Manganos being retried. Although obviously the defense attorneys are hoping that doesn't happen. Right.
I have 2 questions that I was asked by someone I know. Who's paying for Mangano's defense?
Apparently, Mr. Mangano's defense, we've seen copies of his campaign records, campaign contribution records, and he's using his campaign account, political campaign account to pay for his attorney, which, is apparently perfectly legal for him to do.
No, it was in his capacity as a public elected official that he was, I guess... brought up to court. So, okay. What about Venditto?
I believe Mr. Venditto also used his campaign funds, which, as you said, if you're accused of a crime in your capacity as a public official, you are allowed to use your campaign funds to fund your criminal defense. Yeah,
that makes sense to me. As much as I don't like it, because I don't think people gave those donations with that in mind. It really is mind blowing. I think the thing, it gets a little convoluted. I don't want to go too crazy, but it's kind of like a reflection of the country. I mean, people are pulling stuff that a couple of years ago would just be, no, you just don't do that. But we don't have that anymore. We don't have a sense of, maybe even right and wrong. I don't know. The thing that makes me feel a little better is that Nassau County, and that's something I would love to see if Newsday did that, just put out kind of like a timeline of all of the cases that this one incident spurred, and where they are. To get a whole picture of exactly what all of these folks are involved in. I would also like to know who else on the town board of the town of Oyster Bay was involved in letting this happen. And, you can't, nobody can use as a defense, well, the attorney did it and we weren't looking. No, that doesn't work. You work there. If I was the captain of the ship and something went down, it would be my fault, even if I was sleeping. Well,
listen, that was essentially the defense that Mr. Venditto's attorney put forth, and like I said, the jury, believed it because he was acquitted on all charges.
My goodness. Wow.